by the things, by their utterances, as upset and angry as you are. And he said something, he said, when we go outside, we should sell our country. When we come back to the house, we can now come and sweep and wash up and everything, attempt to clean up house. But when we go outside, we should be selling the good we have. And there is so much good. Talk about good. I love my afang soup and okra and all of that. But a young lady decided that, look, I want to make Nigeria proud. First of all, I want to break a record. And in breaking a record, she's making herself a name. She's making a name for herself and making a name for the country. She's making a name for the cuisine we have in Nigeria. Remarkable cuisine, especially from my side of the country. I mean, even if I say so myself.
Somebody's so proud this morning.
Oh, yes, I am. But it's beautiful how Nigerians work at making this nation proud in different fields of endeavor. Sometimes as little as things that you might think are insignificant, Nigerians are there and are making this country proud. What should we do if we see that kind of a thing? But hey, we throw up their name and sing their praises to the glory of God, that these people are even determined and are standing strong regardless of the pressures from all around. Okay.
Well, first and foremost, I heard about this cookathon, and it immediately brought a poem to my mind. We learned in secondary school, when woman cooks, cooks and the food is never done. When woman cooks, cooks and the food is never done. Die hard collar stays, stays without going. Yes. Yes, yes, without going. Yes, 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 without going. Die hard collar stays, stays without going. I mean, it was the very, it just came back to my mind when I'm thinking about the cookathon. I mean, like, how long will you be cooking for? But hey, anything is worth breaking a record for. And it's amazing to see that it's a Nigerian who is attempting to do this. And we're here for it. We certainly will be bringing you a feed from that particular, look at it. That's it. It's on right now. You're seeing it. She's going to be cooking.
And that's a legal stick governor.
Yes, look at that. Oh, he's cheering her on. You can see the timer is right there. She keeps cooking until she eventually... Longest cooking... Is it longest cooking
longest
session?
Cooking record. She wants to break that record.
Oh, wow.
I think the last one stood at 87 hours or thereabout.
87 hours of cooking?
Yeah, I think she's going for 97 or so.
Oh,
Let
wow.
me just Google that.
Oh, wow. Oh, well, we'll see how that goes. We certainly wish her all the best. We're rooting for her. And just to say that, the vice president speaking about how Nigerians, how Nigerians sometimes, and he says very occasionally, usually when people go out of the country, they talk up their country. No matter how bad things are at home, the idea is always to talk up your country. That if ever you see anybody anywhere talking down on their country, it will be most likely a Nigerian. And he says this is something that is not good. We have to work on it. He was speaking at an event, the book launch of someone who launched a book of poems on Nigeria. I mean, his own intense love for Nigeria. His name is Arukaino Omokoro. I think that happened on Friday. So very interesting. You might want to see. And he said when we get back home, we can tell ourselves home truths. But when we're out there, we should talk up our country. That when we are out there, we should remember that we belong to just one side, the Nigerian side. And I think that's extremely important to always bear in mind. You go to some airports sometimes on your way back home, you can immediately tell when Nigerians are gathered and they're complaining and they're talking. Yes, I know, we'll get home, we'll face it. It's our country, we'll love it like that, we'll manage it. But when we're out there, can we just keep our voices down? It will help a great deal, okay? But yes, we're rooting for the young lady and we hope that she's successful in her bid. Whatever it is you do today, I mean, not very much to add. We hope that you're aiming for excellence. We're hoping that you're aiming to do your country proud, because at the end of the day, we all make up this country. If this young lady breaks the Guinness Book of World Records for the longest cooking, she would have done herself proud and by extension done the country proud. So whatever it is you do, we hope that you are aiming for excellence, because it is in your own excellent comportment that your own country is lifted. So not one for motivational talk, but I hope that that's something for you to reflect on today. Ayo and Kayode.
Oh, I love food. I said that out loud, didn't I? Okay, you know what? Let's start again. I'm pretty sure there's a song for that. I know. I mean, staying in the kitchen for 5 minutes is a lot of work. Staying in the kitchen for 10 minutes, for maybe an hour, kudos to you, but she's planning to do this for over 90 hours. The current record, when I checked earlier, was just about 87 hours, 45 minutes. Yeah. She's at 87 hours, 7 minutes now. So in just about 38 minutes, she will inch towards that record and break it. But she's even planning to go beyond, the 7 hours.
According to the timer, as you can see, she has 7 hours, 7 minutes to go. Right.
There you see the live feed from
the live feed,
cookathon, and you can see her stretching. Goodness, that is 4 days now.
Stop. Jesus.
I know. So, I mean, she has a long...
But it's not a big deal. Marco can do it. I mean, it's not a big deal.
Sure. Okay. We'll just leave that for later, okay? But really, I love the fact that a lot of Nigerians have gone to visit. One thing I noticed is the fact that, politicians across the divide have, at least this is one thing they agree on, okay? The fact that there is that Nigerian spirit. Yes, the Nigerian spirits will always shine, wherever it finds itself. But they are the barest minimum things that people need for this spirit to shine, even right here in Nigeria. To stage something like this is not a joke. The expenses, in fact, there's a process. You have to apply for it. It takes weeks to get a response. You have to submit evidence. It's a lot, really. I would expect the Guinness World Records, of course, to validate this eventually, but way to go. I mean, I cannot count how many Nigerians she has inspired, young people, girls and men alike. So, Hilda Baci, way to go. Maybe I can visit in the coming hours, taste the meal, and, just give you thumbs up. But I just wanted to know, as a lot of Nigerians have shown, that indeed we're rooting for you, and there is so much good that can come out of Nigeria. You know what I noticed? There are lots of Nigerians on that world record. Honestly, I didn't even know a lot of Nigerians have set records. I mean, one of them is Bayo Moborio, for example, who has the record for the biggest photo book. I mean, he launched that, I think it was in 2021 or thereabouts. And you can see there are over 100 Nigerians on that record. So, hey, this is motivation for you. Do not get bogged down by your environment or what seems like your reality. Hey, go for gold.
I think that puts to rest that statement that young Nigerian, lazy Nigerian youths, well, clearly, Hilda is not a lazy Nigerian youth. And I'm pretty sure that there are so many Nigerians who are not lazy. Rooting for anyone is a lot of work as well. And Kade, a few days ago, I just saw a word trending, IDA, and I
wow.
Why is it trending?
Do you want to get into that this morning?
Well, it was only later that I found out I was one of the support, so to speak. Of course, you've seen Governor of Lagos State, Sanwo-Olu, there. The Vice President spoke with her. So many celebrities. Tiwa Savage has been there. Eniolu has been there. Charles Okafor. So many.
Spyro and the rest have been there.
So many people have been there. And of course, we've had support from Peter Obi, from Atiku, from Asiwaju. And I think it's the one by Asiwaju that really, caught my attention, because I was why is it not trending?
That's a topic for a whole week, really. A whole week.
He said it don't breaks records, doesn't break, and that is something about the Nigerian spirit. You don't break the Nigerian spirit. Otherwise, as you said, Kaudi, how could 100+ Nigerians be on the Guinness World Records? And guess what? I don't know how many searches for Guinness World Records to break that Nigerians have searched right now in the past.
Which one can I break?
Which one can I break?
We need to respect the sous chef, by the way. He's been there with her through thick and thin, cleaning, supporting. So honestly, I don't know his name. I really wish I could, find out what his name is to also appreciate him. He's been with her.
It's a whole team. I saw her taking some medicals. Every now and then she takes a little break within an hour.
I think she gets 6 hours break.
So she takes those rests, do the needful, clean up, eat or whatever, if that ever happens, and all of that. So It's a whole team that she had to put together. And I think this is something that we should all tell ourselves. It is possible. I've seen some people put on Twitter that, you know, we are fantastic people. It's only our leaders that are not doing this or not doing that. My response to that would be, hey, Nigerians, leaders are Nigerians as well. If you can do one thing in your little corner to shore up the name Nigeria, as Malkwe and Kade have said, nothing stops the leaders from lining up with you and saying, let's make this nation much greater than it is now. So, Hilda, we're rooting for you. It's a popular slang now, but indeed, every Nigerian I know is rooting for you. No one envies you. In fact, everyone supports and is rooting for you. Go, girl.
Most people washing their hands. Nigeria has that record, by the way. Over 100. But you know what?
It's obvious that you don't spend too much time in the kitchen, but 5 minutes being hard work, you should talk to some people. But anyhow, Hilda Baci is doing a good job. Go girl, as my colleagues have already said. And indeed, Nigerians are out there who have broken records and who have made the Guinness Book of Records. And we do commend every other person who is doing all that they are doing to put us in the map and to make a name. I mean, growing up, we used to hear that a good name is better than all the riches in the world. A name will get you to where you need to get to. So keep your name and keep pushing. Do not let what you cannot do stop you from what you can do. We'll be back in a moment to look at what the papers are saying. Don't go away. And starting out with a look at the papers with The Guardian. Malpa, do you know you're owing the world some money?
Well,
okay. In case you did not know, the front page of The Guardian has some blue picture there, an infographic that says 17 years after Paris Club relief, external debt rises to 41.8 billion. Hold on. What's it? Nigeria's debt burden, what each Nigerian owes. And then you see there, it says debt per Nigerian jumped from 17,800 under ex-president Obasanjo to 368,421 naira under President Buhari. So that's how much you're owing if you break it down. So that's between 1999 and 2023. So you see the infographic there going up from 2.1 to 41.8 billion. That's a picture. But coming down here, and some people say we are still in good standing. I mean, Nigeria is not the only country that owes, but it's how we manage the loans that have been collected or what they are used for.
Collected in tax anyway. Yeah. So you pay back through your taxes. That's why you should pay your tax. Pay your tax.
Please, pay your tax. Amid criticisms, Akpabio widens consultations, gets backing of 68 senators. That story continues on page 6 as well. And then down at the bottom there, you see 2,518 Nigerians evacuated from Sudan, says NIDCOM. And then fuel subsidy, suspend disbursement of $800 million loan to FG. Serap urges World Bank. And that's it from The Guardian.
Well, this morning, the Abuja Inquirer, which I like to review because it talks about my city, says there's anxiety in Abuja. Well, that's what it says. Talking about the weather. It's related to the weather. FEMA warns residents of critical weather. So if you live in the same city as me, please be careful. You know, things can get a bit awry with the weather. And we've seen people lose their lives here in this city as a result of the rains or not taking heed. Maybe when there is where there's flash floods, or sometimes a road is blocked and you still decide to go and take that particular road, and then you end up, you know, in a place where you're trapped. So you have to be very careful. Predicts flooding, deadly thunderstorms. That's another thing to look out for. The lightning can be pretty frightening. But that's the lead story on the front page of the Abuja Inquirer this morning. They have a number of other stories there. Adeboye dedicates multi-millionaire church building in Abuja, all of them here in Abuja. Newly elected governors begin induction today, so that's also something to look out for. Kenyan president, ex-US governors, mayor of New York to participate. Wish you could be a fly on the wall to hear what they're learning, but that's how we leave it for the Abuja Inquirer.
Right, take a look at Leadership newspaper. Honestly, I know that there's a lot of work that needs to be done for that induction, but Leadership newspaper, okay, has Hilda on the front page. Yeah, those pictures you see there are pictures of
The Cookathon?
Yeah, Baci. And essentially, it shows the work she's been doing, Hilda Baci, for 4 days now. Yeah, Nigerian young girl set to break world cooking record, 27 years old. But the big story is on politics. NAS leadership, anxiety heightens as APC governors meet today. Anxiety over what exactly? I mean, is it anxiety? I mean, are Nigerians feeling that anxiety? Are they maybe as excited or as anxious as the politicians are? Well, writers say aggrieved aspirants reject Deputy Speaker offer. Don't bow to pressure. Stakeholders counsel Tinubu will not allow a repeat of 2015 drama, and it goes on and on. But just one more for you. Senate queries 10.4 billion naira judgment debt disbursement. It's a very interesting one, really. But you find more details on page 6. That's the Leadership newspaper.
Well, I don't know if this one will cause anxiety, but it's on the front page of Daily Trust newspaper this morning. And I don't know how much that will affect or has affected the Cookathon. Basket of tomato costs 70,000 naira in South.
You need to factor it into the Cookathon. It will affect it. Wait.
Well, it definitely is something. And to imagine that she's not really getting any financial reward for breaking the record.
Well, there are other rewards that might even surpass finance. Oh, by the way, the Cookathon I meant is the whole Nigerian Cookathon. All of us are cooking almost at the same time.
Yes.
So
I don't know why
it affects all of us.
I don't know why you don't like being in the kitchen.
I didn't say I don't like being in the kitchen. I said being in the kitchen for 5 minutes is a lot of work.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I don't know about that.
Don't judge me, please. It's too early.
So that's it. Look at the riders. Prices triple in Lagos, FCT, Kano, Rivers, Enugu, others. Housewives resort to paste, dried varieties. Farmers blame pest attacks and production costs. All of that packed on page 4 of the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. Is it true, Nelta and Malkwe, that the price of tomato has tripled in the FCT as well? Because it has in Lagos. That's the Daily Trust newspaper today.
Well, it's that time of the year, Nyota. I mean, you know when the price of tomato is going to go up. The moment it starts to rain.
Exactly.
And you haven't stocked up. Well, so sorry for you. This is what you'll be paying.
It also says a lot about what we do with our farm produce. You know, we talked about it one
Indeed.
time. Moving it from the farms into the marketplace.
Indeed. And then preserving it is a big problem.
Also
So I'm about to find out whether it has gone up or not, because my own stock just ran out. And I can tell you it's going to be gold. That one I know.
Yeah. Well, we'll be fine at the end of the day. Let's go and look at what the Vanguard's saying. They are not talking about the price of tomatoes right now. They're talking about the 10th National Assembly. That's what the Vanguard's leading with. Shatima, as South Governor, moved to split opposition's ranks. Continues on page 5 with the riders. Parallel group meets today to endorse Abbas, APC Speaker designate. Dogua drops ambition. With number to clean Senate presidency, Akpabio says, Party Supreme will vote Abbas, Kalu, Cross River members elect. G6 aspirants may present Betara as consensus candidate. Minority caucus to take decision on aspirants this week. All manner of, lobbying here and there, everybody moving from one camp to the other. But go to page 5 and read up more on that. Then above the nameplate, this story that broke over the weekend: assault policeman comb Seun Kuti's house shrine. That's on page 14. Interesting times, you might say. Come down a bit. Hardship, presidency, Anglican Archbishop trade words. Hardship. Go to page 11 and find out what that story is about. I mean, over the weekend we heard about how much some people were earning for hardship allowance. I guess that's the story, but you go find out exactly what it is. That's it from the Vanguard newspaper.
I know. Well, to be very honest, I'm so partial to this Daily Trust story. I wish I could take it again. I mean, the headline deserves a second review, to be very honest.
Because tomatoes are costing something?
No, it's because the newspaper realizes that this is what is very important to the average Nigerian. The price of goods and services in the market is what is. I mean, look at this. I'm not berating any paper. I mean, this is politics sells, for God's sake. But at the end of the day, you have to ask, how is it affected? Yes. How is it affecting the price of tomato in the market? So Tech Nas is what New Telegraph has on the front page for you. Tinubu's loyalists liable for House Senate leadership crisis. That's according to sources. They attribute it to sources. That's what New Telegraph has on the front page. Keep Tinubu out of it, says party chieftain. APC, NAS leadership aspirants draw battle line over zoning formula. We won't allow repeat of 2015 mistakes. That's according to APC. And you also see there a number of other stories. Bode George meets President-elect associates, pledges support. They have riders there to that particular story. CBN mulls new monetary policy framework to curb inflation. So maybe that is going to be related to the basket of tomatoes price, which we saw earlier, because, I mean, that is also something that inflation is affected. They also have that story on assault, alleged assault. Falano to defend Seun Kuti. Singer may turn himself in today. PSC demands his immediate prosecution. Well, certainly, I think everybody is singing from the same hymn sheet on that one. It's a surprise that he hasn't turned himself in already with the same energy with which, you know, he was seen harassing or assaulting the police officer. You know, when you do something like that, you should also be man enough to own up to it. If you've done wrong, face the law and maybe apologize. Who knows, maybe the law might be kind. But let's leave it there for New Telegraph.
Well, Nigerian News Direct is up next with this story. Senate indicts Justice Ministry over 10.4 billion naira judgment debt. Orders Ilorin Varsity 8 others to refund 4.7 billion naira fund mismanaged. How many days now to the end of the 9th Assembly? Well, just 2 weeks?
29 minus 15.
Okay, that's 2 weeks on the dot. So, yeah, we'll see how this plays out, especially with the judgment debt part, because there's a result of judgment. And it's so is it the judiciary versus legislature now?
Yeah, and it's also interesting that, you know, it's the Justice Ministry that is indicted in this, because I always recall here, you know, the SERAP's analysis of the 2017 Auditor General's report. Yes, you can smile. And the most indicted ministry was the Justice Ministry for whatever, you know, maybe unreturned money, unreported, you know, things like that.
The irony of it, right?
Yeah, so why this? And that's the Justice Ministry. Maybe justice has a different meaning, I don't know.
Okay. All right. I'll just leave it at that, with just that story on the front page of a Nigerian News Story. Something to chew on, really. It's a major one.
This Nigerian newspaper has this one, and it's loud. And it's also attributed to SERAP. $800 million loan? No. SERAP writes World Bank to suspend disbursement to Nigeria. Buhari's massive borrowing reverses debt relief gains. I don't think it's even possible for the processes to go through before the tenure of this administration is over, because that letter sent to the Senate, for instance, has been read, no action has been taken. And without that action, I don't know if it is possible. Is it possible for them to collect? And it's not possible.
Very valid question. In fact, I asked the country director for World Bank, Shubham Chaudhry, the same question. Which of the administrations would get this? And what he essentially said, well, they deal with sovereigns. So another way of saying, whichever government is able to apply for it,
to the end,
they'll give the government. Some say, well, it's too late in the day for this government. Some say, well, we've seen things move very fast. So I know that there are issues around who should handle this, but at least from the World Bank, it says, well, Well, they deal with sovereigns, so whoever asks for it, they'll give a peers. That's what they're saying.
Is that to say that they haven't received the request, or it's just something?
Oh no, the Senate has to approve it. By the way, it's for the taking. The World Bank has approved that, okay, you can have this, but Nigeria has to go through its own processes at the National Assembly, then we can request for it. But hey.
Okay, so I guess that puts that to rest. It's approved, but it's not given yet. All right, well, that's this Nigerian newspaper. Of course, you can see it's a banner headline and so many other stories on the front page of this Nigerian newspaper. And that's with that, we come to an end of a look at the papers this morning. We're back right after now to begin to deal with the issues as they arise. Do stay with us.
Represented our country at the highest level.
The countdown to the inauguration of the 10th National Assembly has started, but there's dust in the air over the zoning of principal offices by the All Progressives Congress.
Senator-elect.
The people in this room have been part of the National Assembly under the umbrella of the Forum of Former National Assembly members from the South-South zone. They come to register their opposition to the micro-zoning of these principal offices.
We use this forum to greet them. The forum notes further that it is the prerogative of senator-elects of the National Assembly to choose their presiding officers to which, that is to say, President of the Nigeria Senate, the Deputy President of the Senate, and indeed other principal officers of the National Assembly. The forum further notes that unlike the House of Representatives of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, where only ranking members can aspire to the position of speakership and deputy speakership positions, all senators-elects are qualified to contest for the offices of the Senate President and that of the Deputy President of the Senate.
As defenders and promoters of democracy, we strongly believe that our role as former National Assembly members will be able to pontificate from a position of strength and also from a position of experience.
The opposition to the microzoning is unanimous.
It is also important to note that our real aim, our real objective here is how the Senate President should be zoned to the South-South. That is our number one aim.
This is democracy, and we all know what democracy means. The rancor and the controversy that has visited the zoning in the recent time is as a result of the macro zoning.
A senator-elect shall nominate another senator-elect. That means this place should be open for people from the South-South, from senator-elect from the South-South, to come and contest.
Although the leadership of the APC has promised to revisit the zoning arrangement, these former lawmakers look like they are not willing to leave anything to chance.
Well, that's also on the lineup for this morning, but right now let's talk about something that's going to end with another beginning in 2 weeks, because the Muhammadu Buhari administration will come to an end with the swearing in of a new government. So, but the conversation is still ongoing as to how well this administration performed, what were the promises made, how far so far. This morning, the focus is on the administration's human rights and public accountability performance. And to join us in that conversation this morning is Oluwadare Kolawole, who is Deputy Director, Socioeconomic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP. He's a good governance advocate. He's a human rights lawyer, and he joins us right here. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Morning.
Let's begin with that we saw on the front page of This Nigeria, which is a report of your communication to the World Bank about the proposed $800 million loan, which, according to Kari, of course, with a conversation with the World Bank representative in Nigeria, has been approved, but has not been given. What exactly informed that letter?
Thank you very much. So I'm happy that, according to Coyote, that the said loan is yet to be disbursed. It's approved. And the articles of agreement and the various rules that govern the World Bank allows it to rescind its decision. And we're happy that at this point, those funds are yet to be disbursed. And the issues are quite simple, really. It's the twilight of this administration. They spent 7 years, almost 8 years now. And then they want to borrow. And if you look at the trajectory, at least from what we have in the public space, the government had come out in April that this loan was supposed to be the palliatives for the subsidy removal, which, again, this government has said they are not doing any longer. So naturally, are those funds still required? And that is within the context of our growing debt profile, faced with coupled with the lack of accountability for even the loans we've gotten in the past, and even the windfalls that we've gotten, for instance, from the Abacha loot that we've gotten severally under this administration. And that is why we've taken that step to ensure that if at all this loan is going to be disbursed, Nigerians have the right to know, to understand what it's being used for. And really, there is no basis for that loan at the present. But the same government is saying now that those funds will be used to pay millions of Nigerians 5,000 per month to lift them out of poverty. So the question is, what has the government been doing for 8 years? The MBS report mentions how millions of Nigerians are still living in poverty. It's just not, it's not adding up, so to speak.
But it's clear. I mean, you also said that they were clear about the objectives, that it's going to be used to pay palliatives.
There are conflicting objectives now. One was subsidy removal, then they turned around to say
originally, the whole idea has always been pay about 50 million Nigerians 5,000 naira monthly for 6 months. That was. You don't think it's
that data that supports that payment that has been done in the past has lifted any Nigerian out of poverty? And really, one needs to not be a professor in economics to understand. If you pay such amount every month, the growing level of inflation around the goods that they need, power, electricity, education, of course, it's going to take all this up. It is just, if you ask me, this is just another way to ensure that this money is possibly end up in the wrong pocket. We've not gotten accountability for the ones we've gotten in the past. Why should every Nigerian owe again? I saw the news reports this morning. Guardian is attributing more than 300,000 naira to every Nigerian for that owed. And then it's going to rise again. For what purposes? Really, it doesn't stand to reason.
Well, the World Bank, in that conversation I had with the country director, says they have, rules as to how funds like this will be dispersed. So they're not just given the funds, they'll ensure that they follow through with how the funds are dispersed. Because I know it's a major talking point, how will these funds be dispersed? But this is a situation the government finds itself in. If subsidies are removed by June, I mean, there's a 2023 budget already, and it captures subsidy up until June. But the projection is if it is not removed by June, Nigeria will be spending over 5 trillion naira on subsidy. At least 2 trillion if it's removed by June, but 5 trillion if it's not removed by June. So the government finds itself in that situation where revenues are not enough. Even if the World Bank does not give Nigeria the loan, Nigeria will still have to try to find the money from somewhere else, at least to sort the budget. So are you saying that this government should not be the one taking the loan, it should be the next government, or we should not take this loan altogether?
The answer is very simple. Government should not take this loan until the same government who canvass for votes from Nigerians are able to convince Nigerians why we need these loans. And one of the very important things they should do is not only to explain the use of the loan, to show how funds in the past, whether internally generated or loan, has been spent. And Nigerians have not seen that. And the laws are quite clear, including the Articles of Agreement of the World Bank, as to what binds the World Bank, how those funds are to spend, our fiscal responsibility, for instance, about how those funds should be spent. Nigerians have not seen that. We've seen money come in and end up in private pockets. So how can government justify another huge borrowing on the pretext of lifting Nigerians out of poverty when we've not gotten explanations for how the funds in the past have been spent? Abacha loot is a case in point. Billions of dollars have come in. How have they been spent?
So is that to say you're not satisfied with the assurance the government gave over time that they were all diverted into infrastructure?
Of course. Serap is not satisfied, and I dare say most Nigerians are not, because it is a very core function of government to explain to Nigerians. And I say this as part of the electoral process. They do come to Nigerians, they make promises, they give data, they speak. So it means they understand that aspect of their job. But when they come into offices, they still need to convince Nigerians why they need to take every step.
I'm sorry, Gowdy, I punctuated your line of questioning, but to that, perhaps the issue here is not whether or not government is accountable to people. Perhaps the issue is whether or not people believe that government is accountable, because from time to time we always hear, okay, this is what we are doing with this, that's what we're doing with that. Is it a problem of conviction or a problem of not reporting at all?
I would say it's a challenge of experience, and experience trumps knowledge, really, because people have seen they've experienced government for years, since 1999 at least, in case in point, and for the past 8 years they have experienced this administration. We've had of budgets every year, huge amounts of money. We've seen deficit. We understand
the same story with every government we've had.
Translating to anything on
It's the same story we've heard since 1999.
Exactly. So people have the right to demand to know how these funds have been spent. For instance, look at the budgetary allocation for this year, 2023 budget. The National Assembly is getting over 200 billion naira. For what purposes? How much is the allocation to health, to education, in terms of recurrent expenditure, instead of capital expenditure? What about the huge amounts of money spent on security votes nationwide, including from the president down? And these are things, and that's what I'm speaking to experience, that would convince the average Nigerian that these funds are being judiciously spent. But that is not seen. And even when organizations like Sarah ask questions, we do not get answers. We end up in court. We have more than 25 cases in court based on the freedom of information request. And what does it mean? It means we are simply asking government questions that we have a right to ask as citizens, and we do not get answers. And we have the Attorney General defending these cases in court. What it simply means is that government is in court defending an action why they should not give citizen information, and now funds and other administrative steps have been taken. And this is a government that comes to canvass for votes, that releases information that seems harmless. But why don't we get information on those things that are very important? So this $800 billion, why can't the government convince us in the reality with fact and figures to show how these funds will be spent, what it will do for the average Nigerian, and steps that would ensure that it doesn't go the way of those in the past? It's just simple.
I think you touched on a very important point. Yes, the $800 million conversation will definitely go on. And I think for the vulnerable Nigerians, 50 million or 10 million households, I think there will be that question about whether or not they even want it in the first place. Some will say, well, it's good for them if you're to remove the price, or at least the palliative in terms of subsidy. You should find a way to return it to their lives. So I know that conversation is on. But when you talk about asking for vital information, seeking accountability from government, transparency, and you do not get those answers, I want you to lay those issues bare. Who do you demand these information from? Is it a ministry? Is it a particular department that you're not getting the answer? So that Nigerians are on the same page. They are clear on who to put pressure on, because government is meant to be accountable to us.
The laws that guide this, they are very clear. They are very simple, and it doesn't contain a lot of legalese. So, for instance, Section 39 of the Constitution says clearly that every Nigerian has a right to freedom of expression. And what it means that what we are doing presently is part of that right. It means to impart and to receive. And then the Freedom of Information Act is an act of the National Assembly passed in 2011 that mandates public institutions. And public institutions means the presidency, from the presidency down to every public institution, including private institutions that are funded by public funds, to proactively keep and disclose information, which is why, for instance, you go to the website of the Debt Management Office this morning, you will see the entire public debt stock of Nigeria. You see information about those things. Why do we as Nigerians know how much we owe, but we do not know enough about how those funds have been spent? And so the FOI mandates institutions to keep information and to provide it to all Nigerians upon demand. And the law is so good that it doesn't even require the demand and to be in writing. But SERAP has gone a step further to write. And we've written to the presidency, we've written to the National Assembly, we've written to virtually any MDA you can think of in Nigeria, basically asking simple questions, information.
None of them have responded.
Very few. And I'd say the return rate, a positive return rate is less than 2%, and which is why we end up in court.
So let's imagine you sent letters, I'm just saying hypothetically, to 100, only 2 have responded.
Yes, positive responses. Positive responses.
What do you mean?
The response rate is about 9%. A response can be, we are not giving you, we don't have it, it's with another NDA, and then the positive response will be providing the information source, including the part of it. And so that is what is at 2%.
But so you're saying that 91% do not respond at all?
Yes. And really, we shouldn't be surprised. We've seen the Auditor General annually reel out reports indicting MDAs of government for not opening their books and accounting for how much they spent. Why, if they do not respond to the Auditor General, really, why would they respond to Sarah?
So help us understand what may be happening behind the scenes if you're not getting the information from 91%, let's say. What are the possibilities of what's going on behind the scenes? Because I mean, you can't see, but what are those possibilities?
And one of them is, there's a very good example, the NDDC, for instance. President Muhammadu Buhari had ordered a forensic audit of the NDDC. That wouldn't have happened if, for instance, there are accountability mechanisms that ensure that citizens can demand information and know. And what was the outcome? Even though the report hasn't been published, that the NDDC has more than 300 accounts, according to the report. Shouldn't that have been discovered earlier? And those are the kinds of information that should be in the public domain. So without information, you would understand. A lot could be going on, and we wouldn't know.
But I will find that very curious, and here is why. And thank you very much for that question, Kayode. Because it is the responsibility of the National Assembly, at least 2 committees, one in the Senate, one in the House of Representatives, to perform these oversights and ensure that these information that you're asking for are given, to ensure accountability of the ministries, departments, and agencies. So essentially you're saying if the federal government's ministries, departments, and agencies, which the Budget Office DG put at more than 1,400 in all, if they are not doing what they're supposed to do, making information available, it means that the National Assembly themselves are indicted because they are supposed to perform these functions. They're supposed to make sure that they give this information. Isn't that so?
We have a case against the National Assembly presently in court, another FOI request. Basically, the question we asked the National Assembly was, we've seen a lot of corruption probes. Can Nigerians know the outcomes of those corruption probes? We didn't get a response, and we're in court. And you would think that is very simple. That has no financial consequence, so to speak. We simply ask the question, can you give us details of how many corruption probes have been instituted by the National Assembly, the process is taken, and the outcomes? Who has been indicted? Which steps have been taken on it? We didn't get a response. And so those are the challenges we are facing for the constitutional right that's been granted to Nigerians to know and to have information. So what they do with that information is not the government.
Essentially, you're saying that this government is not accountable.
Of course, that's what it
by
means.
Percentage, I mean, you give a percentage of it.
By the response rate to SERAP's FOI request, and that is one. The second is the amount of public information in the public domain. So I'm giving an example of the DMO. You see the number of deaths, but really that's not enough.
It's very interesting because there's this fact sheet of the government's achievement from when it came into power, and I'm sure you've seen. There's actually a fact sheet. It chronicles some of those things, and open transparency is one of the key points there. Open government partnership, for example, saying that the president, pledged that Nigeria will join the open government partnership, and in 2016, Nigeria became the 70th country to join open government. I've been to that. There's this website where you can actually get some of the details. At some point it was down. I've not gone back to check it, but these are some of the things that the government speaks about. Asset recovery, for example, the PACAC and all of that. So for this government, it actually speaks highly of itself when it comes to accountability, transparency. But you know what? My colleague Marwe has questions for you. Imagine Neil Tatu. Over to you guys.
Well, we're still keeping tabs on the cookathon going on, which you can follow up, on YouTube, and you can also see right here on. And I think we just have about 2 minutes left to the breaking of that record. So just to, put that out there. But let me quickly come back to the conversation we're having. Oh, yes, indeed, you can see that. I mean, her spirits are still up. But let's take a look at let's take a look at some of the visuals that we're seeing right there. People are still cheering her up, rooting for her, pushing for her. A few minutes more right now to the breaking of the world record. Hear the song.
I think she's broken the record. She is right now. I think she's going to be able to set her own record. And of course, Nigerians are happy to amazing thing. While this was happening, there were people outside, under the rain, dancing, celebrating, and of course, the Nigerian spirit's there. See, Nigerians just love Nigerians.
Indeed, we do.
Nigerians just love Nigerians.
Our fan clubs can be the biggest, the noisiest.
Yes.
And if you listen to a football match being played, you know when Nigerians are in the stadium, you cannot miss their fan club.
And guess what?
And Hilda certainly has some on her
all
side.
Of that, if you go through the crowd there is no from north, south, there's no north, south, east, or west in that space.
Indeed.
What you have in there amongst the people out there hooting for Hilda Baci are people who are Nigerians.
Indeed.
Not Yoruba, not Igbo, not Hausa, not Efik, not Ibibio, not Yako. It's Nigerians that are there, not Egu. It's Nigerians that are there hooting for that young lady who has broken the world record. And of course, as they'll say, the Guinness Book of Records will have to validate this, and then hopefully we'll be there to see the presentation of that plaque to say she has broken the record for the longest cooking hours in history.
Indeed. I mean, as the VP said earlier, we'll push forward our own, but right now we're telling ourselves some home truths, and the home truth is that we need some more accountability. We're coming back to the studio now. We're coming back to the conversation we're having with Mr. Kolawole on accountability and what exactly is happening with the loans which the federal government is proposing to take. What have they done in the past, and what would they do in the future? So let's come back to this conversation now. I'm going to be drawing on the earlier questions asked about that proposed $800 million loan, which the federal government is intending to take from the World Bank, which was initially planned to cushion the effect of the removal of subsidy. We've since been told that the new administration will come and remove, or they're going to leave that decision to the new administration to decide. But people are still asking questions, why then are you still going ahead with getting the $800 million loan? Right now, as we know it, the National Assembly has now received a request for approval from the executive arm of government. It's now before the National Assembly to give this approval. We have been following up on that discussion here for you. And I want to know what our guest here, Mr. Oluwadare Kolawole, thinks about, disbursement. Because at the end of the day, some people will say that when you sometimes give a loan, you sometimes want to see how the loan which you've given is being used. Do you think that the World Bank will be willing to give out a loan if it is not certain that the loan is going to be used for the purpose for which it was intended?
Thank you very much, Mokwe. The World Bank's role in this is different from what the citizens' own point of view will be. And that is why you see, from the news report we saw on Guardian this morning, for instance, he has signed over 300,000 to each Nigerian. None of that was assigned to World Bank. This would affect us, whether positively or negatively. And that is why we Nigerians are asking the hard questions in this instance. And for SERAP, it is very contextual. We have experienced this. We are presently in court over 2 FY requests to this same administration about how the social protection program funds have been spent and the various loans that have been gotten in the past. If we did not get a response to those questions and the information is not available in the public domain, how are we sure that these loans, these $800 million will be spent accountably and transparency for the benefit of Nigerians? And to answer your question simply, yes, the World Bank, they do have an obligation under the Articles of Agreement, that's Article 3, that allows them to ensure that the funds are spent for the purposes for which they are disbursed. And that includes, that is majorly for reconstruction and development. And that is contextual, really. While the Nigerian government could have made various could have told the World Bank a lot of things about how the funds will be used. We, the Nigerian people who will benefit or suffer the consequences, we hold the highest stake, and we should ask questions that we're asking presently.
Okay, well, I did also speak with a few other members of civil society on Friday, had a conversation with them on this, and one of them was of the view that perhaps we should hold a public hearing. Do you think that would help with the level of, especially now that the request for approval is now before the National Assembly, do you think that would help in any way, holding a public hearing before that approval is granted, if it will be granted?
I cannot think of any circumstances where this has happened in the past, but it is not a bad thing entirely. Understanding the various mechanisms, but the President's executive, the National Assembly, they add the legislature, they make the laws, they approve in this instance such a request for loans. And it is all designed as part of the checks and balances to ensure that power is not absolute in one arm of government. So it would not be out of place if that should happen. But primarily, because at the public hearing, Nigerians will be asking the hard questions. Why can't we ask the executive, and in this instance, the President, since he's the one making the request, to justify to Nigerians, not the National Assembly, why this loan needs to be taken, and as part of that is to justify how the ones in the past have been spent, and that goes to the various issues of governance, including even the cost of running the State House and all that, and that is why I dare say that the executive have not been forthcoming with information on governance, particularly when it comes to our financial obligations and spending.
Yes, sir.
You know, your aid organization continues to push for accountability, and you've mentioned a couple of times how you're still in court over the FOI asking government to account for the way they spent some of the monies that have already been taken. But if you look at, I mean, there's been a list, I have a list here of about 20 achievements of this current administration, and one of those things is the infrastructure Infrastructure Corporation of Nigeria that was set up to look at the provision of infrastructure across the country, and the government prides itself in carrying on the biggest infrastructure project in the history of Nigeria. Yet you still argue that they've not done enough in terms of accountability for the monies that have been, the loans that have been taken and monies generated. What else do you want the government to do?
Delivering on outcomes of governance is a totally different concept from the process of governance itself. And accountability speaks to the process. Of course, we know that affects the outcome ultimately, but the processes. So it is not enough, for instance, for a government to say that we have done bridges or built roads or built schools. How much did it cost? How can we relate that to the budget? And then this speaks to the allocation in the budget cycle. What is recurrent? What is capital expenditure? So perhaps, and perhaps what we are getting as infrastructure pales in comparison to what goes on as recurrent expenditure, mostly to public officers. And that speaks to security vote and pension. And speaking of pension, in the next couple of months, when the new governors come in, Nigerians would spend more billions of naira across more than 22 states, paying governors and deputy governors, those that have left office, billions of naira as part of the pension laws. And so this goes to accountability, including the president himself, to ensure that they are accountable for all these funds that have been spent. So it is not enough to do infrastructure. Of course, that is a necessary outcome of government. It is to explain to the Nigerian people why we need to do this, how it was spent, which is why we have budget performance cycles, quarter 1, quarter 2, up to quarter 4, to know how much is coming, how has it been spent. And this is not curious to government. This has been on. It's part of the democratic process that as part of the electioneering, they come to make promises. They talk about processes. And then when they get in the office, they need to continue in that process of governance to ensure that the people get the utmost benefit of governance.
Okay, so that bit about getting the utmost benefits of governance, let's look at the cost as against expenses. Is it about how much a project costs? Or let's just say the building of a road is about $1 billion. Are you interested in the process of expending that $1 billion or the process of actually determining the cost of that road? Which one is it that Serap is interested in?
This is not really about service, this is about all Nigerians. So if you, for instance, the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway that's been constructed, it is not enough to see that the road is being constructed. How much was being constructed for? What is the process? And this is not, again, this is part of the processes of the law, which is why the Public Procurement Act has various processes when it comes to expenditure. Who is getting what, when, and how? Is there a bidding process? How much was it? Is the person who get the highest bid, did he get the job? And so these are the kind of questions that goes into the process. And all these, they are put into this governance process to ensure that corruption is at the barest minimum and the people get the utmost benefits of governance, which is what governance is about ultimately, really. So it's not about the cost, it is about the process, while knowing that the process, of course, naturally influences the cost.
Well, one of the other issues that we should really mention is that of human rights. Thankfully, you are a human rights lawyer. Well, of course, that's not to say that we've exhausted all the questions on public accountability, because that really is a thing. But then, even in terms of human rights, accountability is an issue as well. I'm almost certain that, I mean, in that list of fact checks that you saw, because I also saw the same thing, I'm almost certain we will find some human rights pat on the back by the federal government, because the AGF already cited the example of the Apple 6 and said, look, federal government did this, and it's the first government in Nigeria to be that responsive in terms of human rights and all of that. Of course, coming up with a 6-point or action plan or something like that, in terms of human rights. Is that something significant for you?
Of course, but we've been talking about human rights all along, because access to information is a right derivable from the freedom of expression. So we cannot remove this, and that is why in law, those human rights are contiguous. They influence one another. You cannot take away somebody's right to freedom of expression and say you're enabling to the right to life. It is combined. It is interwoven. So freedom of expression is a right. So what you're simply talking about is another aspect of human rights. For instance, you're talking about the right to life and all those things, and freedom from torture and all that as provided in Chapter 4 of the Constitution. But with a government that has not provided a good socio-economic environment for citizens to thrive, that itself is an abuse of human rights. And that is why it is not enough to get loans in this instance and spend them. You need to explain. So if the loans funds are well used to build hospitals, for instance, that would further your right to life. The same way you don't want law enforcement agencies to treat you badly or to kill you or unjustifiably. Also, if the government provides amenities, then maybe, perhaps, instances of cholera will go down. People do not have to die. So these rights are interwoven. So we do not have to focus on the right to law enforcement agencies as in looking at those rights. They are holistic. And that is why scoring this administration's performance on human rights, it's abysmally low.
And particularly when you look at the freedom of information, which you say is tied to freedom of expression, right? And which other particular rights are you speaking to for this government?
We started from the right to freedom of expression, which goes to the loan disbursement. But for the other aspects of right, the right to life, for instance. So when you look at those economic rights, which is why they are very important and they're inserted in Chapter 2 of the Constitution, but they are also tied to Chapter 4, which is the part that is justiciable. Without that enabling environment for people to thrive, you really cannot enjoy those other rights. For instance, it's a right in the Constitution that you have the right to own property in any part of Nigeria. Without a good economy, you can't even afford to have money to even rent a house. How much more own property? Which is why those rights are contiguous and they link to each other. So the Nigerian government has this primary duty, which is why the Constitution is very clear, that the primary role of government is security and the welfare of the people. Without creating that environment, they are infringing on the rights of people already. Those other rights are just manifestations of the abuse that government has foisted on Nigerians.
You know, looking at that data sheet or fact sheet, as the case may be, I just did a quick search of rights.
Can you share this? I really don't know.
Oh, definitely. I will, from 2015 to 2023. Oh. And I mean, what I saw about rights was maybe copyright, right of way. There was no specific talk about human rights, but, you know, breaking it down, infrastructure, railroads, air, seaports, you know, there's talk about economy, health, and all of that. But, you know, 2 weeks to the end of this administration means 2 weeks to the start of another administration. Yes, government is a continuum, but we have heads, different heads per time. So do you have expectations? Do you have agenda that you want to set, particularly for those areas we discussed, transparency, and then the rights as well? Do you have expectations and agenda that you want to set?
Of course. The kind of work we do at SERAP will not be possible without hope, which is why we engage and advocate that we cannot afford to be cynical. We need to continue to engage. Of course, we have hope. And one of the key areas we mentioned is the rule of law, which is very important, which, by the way, this administration has failed woefully. And that means establishing, strengthening institutions so that they are able to do their work. And that means implementing the laws in a way that institutions are able to carry out the duties that are meant to do. And a very integral part of that is obeying the judgments of the court, which again speaks to human rights. An individual cannot go to court, spend 2 or 3 years in court, get judgment, and it's not enforced. And majorly, government is a major culprit in this instance. SERAP, for instance, has more than 11 judgments against government, not only this administration, by the way, and none of which has been enforced.
How many for this administration?
For this administration, we have 2. And for instance, and I'll mention this very important one, the pension law. The pension law judgment that was got, and it's very sad. I don't know whether you've seen this report. Honorable Justice Oguntoyibo of the Federal High Court, and she had given this as part of her valedictory speech when she was leaving. She retired earlier 2 months ago, and she had said that was one of the things she has felt was painful for her because that judgment wasn't enforced. And the judgment was very simple. It directed the Attorney General to challenge the legality of state pension laws and to recover those funds that have been unlawfully paid. Do you know how much that would be? That would be billions, if not trillions of naira. And then would there be a need to borrow? But again, that judgment is yet to be enforced.
Well, there's too many issues to really raise on this, as I said. But, you know, maybe we're just opening the can and sometimes
visit
an agenda setting, review and preview for the next government. But for now, we have to thank you very much. Oluwadare Kolawole is Deputy Director of Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project. He is a good governance advocate and a human rights lawyer. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Back right after now for more other topics are lined up for you. Please stay with us.
When you have cavities, it hurts so bad it makes you miss school. Even football.
But we prevent cavities before they form with Colgate. Colgate locks calcium in.
Keeps cavities out.
Some identities cannot be mistaken, you know, like your business name and your account name. Your business name if you shoot please. Then the account now. Follow Karim. If I see him, I block him straight. You don't understand? Don't confuse your customers. Sign up for a MoneyPoint business account today and get a business account in your business name in minutes from your shop banker. Thank you very much. You're welcome.
Whatever it takes to make sure you have a business account opened in your business name, we'll do it as your sure banker. Open a bank account in your business name with MoneyPoint.
Heartburn and indigestion? Try Just Eat. My recommendation for the past 26 years, Just Eat. Reliable remedy for heartburn, indigestion, flatulence, and acidity.
The Duchess International Hospital opened its doors in October 2021. The mission of the hospital is to reverse medical tourism. We take particular care here at the Duchess to bring together a combination of the brightest and the best locally, as well as Nigerians in the diaspora who are interested in returning to do very good work for the benefit of our patients here in this country.
The good thing is that we have all international expertise here, all international facilities here, international people working here. Everything is coming together in a space which was considered not great in terms of the availability of healthcare.
Access Bank, of course, has been able to provide us with a robust range of products and services that has enabled us to deliver that standard and quality of healthcare that is integral to our mission as an organization.
Thank you for staying with us. Not too long ago, we received this comment from the DG of the Budget Office. Of course, it was at a public event where he spoke. He said, and I quote, "We have limited space to borrow. When you take how much you can generate in terms of revenue and what you can reasonably borrow, that establishes the size of the budget. The next thing would be to pay attention to the government's priority regarding what project gets what." End of quote. That's from Ben Akabuze, who is DG of the Budget Office. Well, let's have a conversation around this this morning with Mr. Paul Alaje, who is a senior economist at the SPM Professionals. He's a fellow International Management Consultants Board USA. He's also a fellow Institute of Economists in Nigeria. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Mr. Alaje. Well,
thank you so much for having me.
How does that statement from the DG of the Budget Office come across to you? He said, we have limited space to borrow. Is that something that is coming afresh, or you think it's an update?
Well, I think it's the DG Budget Office have always maintained that we need to be cautious regarding borrowing, because he understands that so many reports that international community is releasing about our economy and our fiscal side, they've continued to maintain that we need to do something about revenue, and we need to do something about the priority of where the monies borrowed are going into. But what we see today is that the impact of debt on the economy continue to reduce year in, year out, even though government have maintained consistency in borrowing. But what happens to the impact is the economy growing at par, or the expectation in terms of what the borrowing is doing in the economy. It's a different thing entirely. And I think I agree completely with the DG that as much as we borrow from time to time, the space for which we can borrow is also reducing, because nobody will see a country that has borrowed and is not even having allowance for service, and it will go back to the debt market to borrow more money is going to be practically impossible. Unfortunately, according to the IMF staff report, Nigeria may get to that class if other things remain the same. If other things remain the same by 2026, but we may need to borrow to service our debt. So it's a critical situation we may find ourselves if we don't do something very urgently and very quickly.
But just last year, I mean, it was late last year also, the Minister of Finance was saying we are managing our budgets, we are managing our debts. She said we are comfortable about our ability to pay our debts. I'm pretty sure that that's not just something that she said off the cuff. What do you think?
Well, the same minister had mentioned that the Q1 of 2022, what we generated in revenue was not sufficient to service the debt, not to pay back, not to pay staff salary, not to fuel the jet of Mr. President for holidays or to travel out of Nigeria or even to visit a governor. That is not what she mentioned, but to service the debt, even though at the end of the year, we were able to generate more revenue to service the debt. And when you look at what the debt profile is looking like in 2023 budget, the current year, when you put debt profile on one side and you put payment for subsidy on the other side, and that's service plus subsidy plus a current expenditure, our revenue cannot carry out those three items. In fact, don't let me say recurrent expenditure, let me say payment of salaries, that's workers. The revenue we will generate in 2023 cannot meet up with those three items in the budget presented and approved by the National Assembly. I believe it's a lot of things to worry more. By the time you zoom into the budget and look at the details, you know that, yes, we might say we are managing our debt profile, but what is important is not just to say it. The thing we should ask is, by how much, and I want to underline the next word, in real income are we generating? Are we improving? That is, if we say we generate 100 naira in revenue, because you cannot talk about debt management without generating more revenue. If we say we are generating 100 naira last year, and now we are generating 150, but the central bank has emaciated the value of naira from 200 to 50 naira, you have actually lost 50% of your revenue, because in naira terms, you will think that, oh, revenue has increased from 150 to 200. But the truth is that Nigeria is a nation. Nigeria is not a subnational. It's not one of the states in Nigeria. Nigeria is actually the country. So when we compare the country, we have to compare ourselves with the rest of the world. And in the global terms, the currency as of today, I don't know what China, Russia, and a few other countries will come up with in the matter of years, or maybe 5 or 10 years, if naira, maybe dollar will not be that global currency. But as we speak, it remains that global currency. So Nigeria must be paired with the dollar. That's naira spent in Nigeria must be paired with the dollar. And that's why you see, when you talk about debt, you must also talk about exchange rates. There's no way you will remove exchange rate from the conversation of debt. In 2021, the federal government, through the Central Bank of Nigeria, announced the value of naira reduced by a certain percentage. The Debt Management Office in the subsequent quarter also published that 1 trillion naira has been added to the debt profile. You know the good news? We did not borrow any new money. What happened was all the monies we had collected as foreign loans, when you saw what the new rate will be, it was exactly 1 trillion naira addition to our debt profile. And that is part of over 70 trillion that Nigeria has to pay back to different creditors around the world.
So there are like different issues now. There's the question of raising revenues enough to meet our obligations. I mean, the major obligations, then we can talk about servicing our loans. And then there's a 2023 budget, which we're in already. And I mean, it projects a fiscal deficit of over 10 trillion naira. That's 10.7 trillion naira, about $23 billion, since, I mean, we talk about the exchange rate a lot. But this proposed World Bank facility of $800 million is about 370 billion naira. the conversation is that, well, this might do at least some work in easing that whole, the burden of fiscal deficit, which we already have from the 2023 budget, which, by the way, we hope to finance from MDBs, bilaterals, and even domestic market borrowing. I'd like to get your view particularly on the loan side, $800 million from the World Bank, because I know it's been a major debate now amongst economists. Even we've seen the CSOs speak about it. What options do we have, really?
Okay, so you have asked many questions. The first question will be, do I see it easing the pressure?
No, first, what options do we have? My question is, what options do we have? I mean, those were just to build up, but please go ahead.
Okay. So the option to debt is revenue. The option to debt is revenue. The danger of debt is service. Debt is not free, even though you see 0.2%, 0.65% as cost of the $800 million. So when you check the impact of this $800 million on subsidy removal, you want to ask that will this impact necessarily reduce the pressure that will be meted on our people? And I must also say this: this is just the first tranche of what government is expecting to come to cushion the effect. So why shouldn't we just solve the real problem? I liken this to a mother who wants to cure, who doesn't want a child to have malaria, but instead of taking the child out of a room where there is mosquito, or take the mosquitoes out of the room, she said, no problem, keep staying in the room, I will keep buying you enough drugs so that when malaria comes, you will be cured. But what is the real solution? The real solution to subsidy removal is refinery. I'm happy government is saying that, yes, a private refinery will be open, then the conversation around subsidy will be off. What would that mean? 3.3 trillion naira every 6 months. 6.7 trillion naira every year will be off. If you remove that from the money we borrow, that will be more than 50% off the money we borrowed in 2023. I mean, we are borrowed and we are going to borrow in 2023. So that will have a major impact. But where is the danger? When we leave the fate of over 222 million people in the hands of a board of directors, I can tell you that is monopoly. I don't think that is what the country should do. I think to give hope to our nation, we need to also give out those 4 refineries that we have held on so closely as government, but we've not been able to perform in terms of output to our people. Private sector is interested in output, government is interested in availability, Nigeria is interested in the supply side. There is an agreement in all of these 3 things. Private sector wants to make profit, so give it to them, let them supply. And I'm not saying government should give 100% of our refineries to them. I'm saying government may give 50, 60, 70% to private sector to produce. After all, we have seen example of this with NLNG, and we have seen how that has performed. Similar in the same sector. I hope that government will yield to this call, allow the private sector to support and do that. So other option government has is to also study what the National Bureau of Statistics have always released in terms of the performance of the economy. When you look at some sector, even when we were under lock and key, that's during COVID, President Buhari would always come to announce that Nigeria should not go out, not because he doesn't want us to work, but because I believe he cared about the citizen and he doesn't want more people to be caught down by COVID. But you see, while we were at home, some sector were growing in leap and bounds. Until date, the National Bureau of Statistics continue to report high growth for that sector. Our investigation regarding what government is actually generating from that sector continue to reduce. So where are we having a mismatch from a growing sector in terms of revenue, but when it comes to growth in terms of revenue to government, it is reduced? It's a different conversation entirely. But I know there's revenue in Nigeria and government can do a lot of things about it.
If you could quickly mention those sectors, I mean, you said that the data is out there. What are those sectors? Is it that they're not remitting enough taxes? Is it that they are, but it's not going into government coffers? What do you know about that?
Well, I don't think that government can collect what it does not know how to collect. I will just give you an example of one of the sector, just one. There are many of them, and the document is there so that people can open and do a bit of research. One of them is telco. And when I say telco, people are quick to think it's going to be maybe the network provider. Those are not the way guys. That is why people need to sit with the document and read them. And I also don't want to call the name of any organization on national television. I don't think it would be fair on them. But you see, government will need technology to access how much these organizations truly make. So more revenue will come to government. It's not by asking Mr. ABC to pay more in taxes. We have seen what government did with the VAT. Yes, he has tried a bit, but has he really reduced the significant impact that is projected through the research and development department of various government agencies regarding reduction in government revenue? I doubt. Even though he has done some things, but I don't think it's as significant as government was expecting. But when you look at telco sector, and I'm saying look beyond the network provider, you need to look at other subsectors within that in the telecom sector. Government has a capacity of generating nearly $1 trillion extra from that sector alone, nearly $1 trillion extra from that sector alone. But how do government determine what the revenue of these organizations, all of them, have? Today, the technology, as I speak to you, is not in the hand of government.
Right.
And the traditional collection is what we are still following, which is giving government between 5 to 10 billion naira. When you calculate that, that is about 1% of what government should be generating.
That certainly sounds juicy. I mean, 1 trillion naira. If you look at the, the deficit, if you take out 1 trillion, I mean, that's a huge one. So I imagine that government is listening. But the point you made about fixing the refineries before we can talk about subsidy, I'd like you to just expound on that a little bit more, because if the refineries are fixed, you even talk about the private refinery as well. I mean, the price of crude is in dollars. I mean, the whole process is priced in dollars because the equipment and all of that, it's essentially an international business. So are you saying that if the refineries work, subsidies can be removed and then, I mean, what happens? Nigerians will have to pay. I remember the World Bank saying Nigerians will have to pay more, essentially. Or you're asking that if the refineries are fixed, government should still continue to subsidize. What exactly do you propose in that line?
Let me quickly say this. When you hear World Bank say remove your subsidy today, there are genuine interests and there are also personal interests. The World Bank, I guess, is worried about our fiscal position, which is very bad. But you see, what the World Bank representative will not feel is that some of their payments are dollarized. Payment of an average Nigerian, including myself, is not in the dollars, is in the naira. So when you ask me to pay more, meanwhile, what your income in my country will become more, but mine will suddenly become less, then there is a personal interest, which we need to be very careful about. We need to understand that this economy has not grown with the rate at which inflation, poverty, and so many other things has grown in the country. So if we truly love this nation, we need to look at what are we paying for in terms of subsidy. And this is what I've advised a lot of persons, and I've also put it there in the media, in the print media, for people to go and pick a copy and read about. In 2015, exchange rate official window was 199. Today, exchange rate official window is more than 450. Let's stay with official window. Let's leave the parallel market and what parallel market is saying. Central Bank have said it will not recognize the parallel market. So, but if you say official window was 200 and the parallel market and the official window in 2015 was 200 and now is 450, that tells you that we have seen an increase in tune of over 100%. Maybe 125 or I think 125 or thereabouts. So if you stay with 125 and you remove the difference, that means if you have made policy that has made our currency to be consistent, that is, our export has improved, that is, some of the things central bank is doing has been complemented by fiscal and trade authority, RT200. If there has been a compliment coming from other sides of government in terms of support, then Nigeria would have had a lot of inflow. Then central bank can further defend the naira. But that is not what we have. Over 450, and I'm just being charitable, maybe in real sense, 460. Now that will affect import of PMS. We have crude in Nigeria, we sell it in dollars for next to nothing, then we bring it back to our country with PMS and start subsidizing. So what exactly are we subsidizing? Because if the exchange rate were to be the same today, there will be no need for subsidy. We'll buy at 199, at best at 200, and everybody will be comfortable. Today, we are buying at a higher rate, claiming that there is subsidy. Meanwhile, what is being subsidized is the exchange rate differentials. Who makes the decision about exchange rate? Who should have ensured that Nigeria exports more? Who should have provided support for private sector?
If you can hear me, just a second, Mr. Alaje. If you can hear me, we're completely out of time. We need to wrap up now, but a quick one, maybe if you can take this on in just about 30 seconds. You know, when we talk about Nigeria's debt burden, we're talking about internal and external debts. And there are those who will say, okay, a lot of attention is definitely on the external debts, but the internal debt is, you know, domestic debt is quite significant as well. And there are those who will reference the 23 trillion naira that the CBN printed, so to speak, which is against the CBN Act. On the one hand, we might be doing a good thing, but then should we be, there are those who will say that's illegal in itself, it's not right for the CBN to take on that kind of responsibility. How do you think that should be addressed? Doing the right thing or going about it against the law?
Well, I must tell you, there's nothing good about that. That has 89% negative impact on the economy. It's a fresh research we just conducted. 89% negative impact on the economy. If the debt management of the office had not run to National Assembly for reshaping that loan, I mean the interest on it, I tell you, it would have meant that every blessed year we'll be paying back not between 3 to 4 trillion naira. And it doesn't mean that we are even paying something really reasonable now. About 9% of 23 trillion, effectively you are paying 1 trillion naira every year as cost of borrowing, even with the way the government have said it should be rescheduled.
Mr. Alaje, so, I apologize. My sincere apologies. I apologize for starting that off. But I think it sounds to me like you are essentially saying it's another task that the next administration has to take on, because whether we like it or not, these things have to be cleared. And it's not just a job for the executive. The legislature has a role to play as well. We have to thank you very much, Mr. Paul Alaje, Senior Economist, SPM Professionals, Fellow International Management Consultants Board USA, and Fellow Institute of Economists in Nigeria. Thank you so much for your time, and we most certainly will have you again.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, there's more after this break we're about to take now. What happens in the next assembly? That's up when we return. Please stay with us.
New beginnings are always colorful. When we celebrate the start of life's journey, we marry in colors. With our proudly Nigerian Dulux paints, now available in any color. Express your world however you want it. Visit a Dulux Color Center to get any color instantly. Dulux, let's color.
Heartburn and indigestion? Try Just Eat. My recommendation for the past 26 years, Just Eat. Reliable remedy for heartburn, indigestion, flatulence, and acidity.
Hi, I'm Pat Rankin, and they don't call me World Best for no reason. I only deal with the best. Be it auto or business, 100% claim is always guaranteed.
Welcome to world-class insurance services. We are Anchor Insurance. Where insurance truly works.
When you have cavities, it hurts so bad it makes you miss school. Even football.
But we prevent cavities before they form with Colgate. Colgate locks calcium in.
Keeps cavities out.
because we are the
Contestants for the speakership position of the 10th National Assembly from the All Progressives Congress stormed the national headquarters of the party for a crucial meeting with the party's National Working Committee.
And that is where the language...
They are led to the meeting by the Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives, and the issue on their mind is the zoning arrangement for the seat of the Speaker.
What makes you think that what you have done will stand the test of time? I don't know if it's going political lineage. I think I'm a better person in terms of leaders of Aswaji family because I came under AC from 2007 until when we had the merger. I've served you as deputy leader of the House. I'm now serving you as deputy speaker of the House of Representatives. If you are going to do anything, what makes you think that we're not qualified? We are not against our leaders, but if we should sit down and say, okay, sit among yourself and pick somebody you know you can work with, it's easy. It's easy. But the person the speaker is trying to even pick, there are some of our colleagues in the same assembly that even don't know him, sir.
5 of the aspirants were at the meeting, and they want the party to do something about the situation to avoid past experiences.
If not, sir, because of the integrity of the members of the State Working Committee, the real language in our letter is that we are rejecting. We are rejecting what is in circulation. It is unacceptable to us. We are independent bodies, sir. National Assembly cannot be turned to be like a Federal Executive Council where you pick whosoever you want to pick for. It can't be run like that.
If we stuck our neck and lost lives in defense of our party, and when it is time for reward, I believe it is the state that has delivered that should be given the right of first refusal, and not the excuse that was being peddled, that is, Abia State does not have a governor, and so whatever leadership position comes to the southeast should go to Abia. I think it is demoralizing.
The group documents their petition against the zoning arrangement, which the party's national chairman promises to give some consideration.
I plead with you in good conscience to give us a little time to take a good and better look at your presentation and open our ears and eyes the more.
The National Working Committee of the APC had on Monday officially announced the zoning of the seat of the Speaker to the Northwest, with Mr. Tajuddin Abbas as the consensus candidate.
And that's where we're focusing on this conversation about the leadership of the National Assembly. Of course, there's still reactions to the decision of the All Progressives Congress to have the offices, the principal offices, micro-zoned, that's what they call it, micro-zoned to certain people, but zoned to the certain regions, which they all agree with, but then there's the micro-zoning to certain people and names pushed out that they're all reacting to. And to help us in today's conversation, we have Eze Nwachukwu, who's a newly elected member of the House of Representatives, representing Ebonyi Ohaoku Federal Constituency in Ebonyi State. He's a convener of the 10th Assembly Unity Group for the newly elected members. He's already doing his job. And a former chairman of the APC in Ebonyi State. We had also expected to have here in the studio Honorable Abdul Oro, who is a member of the Forum of Former National Assembly South Caucus, Parliamentary Director, Secretary, APC Presidential Campaign Council, but he couldn't make it to the studio. Let's start with you, Honorable Eze. So, this decision by the leadership of your party to zone the principal offices to the regions that it did, you're happy with that?
Yes. So happy with that.
But your colleagues are not happy with the aftermath, the micro-zoning to certain individuals, contrary to what the Constitution says.
You see, let me come this way. First and foremost, thank you for having me on board in this discussion. Having served as the state chairman of our great party and the foundation member
at least to the extent of the state level management of the party, I know much about it. You see, a political party is like a family, a unit of a family. In the family where you have one thing that many members, children of the same house, are jostling for it, you take certain things into consideration. In this arrangement, the party laid a very strong foundation before this pronouncement. But because most of us politicians are sometimes driven by this passion to get things for ourselves. For example, immediately after the election, not too long from the election, after the election, we were all invited to the State House, had meeting with our party leadership. The vice president-elect represented the president-elect at his own capacity, the national chairman, and all of us, both the senators-elect and the House of Representatives-elect, both new and returning members. In that meeting, we had a kind of an agreement and a take-home message from the party, directly from the party chairman, and said, look, we have some pending elections. People should step down their interests in becoming whatever in the incoming leadership of the National Assembly, that we should hold on for the party to come up with a zoning formula. That was the instruction, and nobody objected to this. We saw that as a direction already given by the party and the foundation for unity. One is expected to step down whatever interests or ambition you have and wait for the direction of the father and the leader of the house.
Oh, sorry, let me just come in here. That's what you call the strong foundation.
Yes.
Now, the argument, like for instance, the argument that came up yesterday from the Forum of Former National Assembly members is not, they're not questioning the zoning arrangement to the South-South and to the North-Central again and South-East. They're not questioning that.
Yeah.
The concern
Northwest, I think.
Northwest, yeah, Northwest. The concern is why decide for certain individuals, put out names that these are the preferred or these are the candidates we want for this, when you should have allowed us to go and do our own election as the Constitution has mandated us to do. Isn't that what that's the argument?
The one way they are right, in the other way they should also put some consideration. To the extent they claim they are right is that we are left as the legislators with the mandate to choose our leaders ourselves. But what the party has done should not be seen as imposition.
Yes, what should it be seen as?
It should be seen as a direction. The party have made a statement. This is what we wish. This is our thinking. As the father of the house, like I earlier said, this is our thinking. This is how we wish this should be. Do you know that? Because eventually, it's not going to end with what the party have said. We're still going to vote.
Let me relect. I mean, I really wish that, you know, this is supposed to be English,
it is a direction.
English language. You say it is a direction.
Not imposition.
Not imposition.
The party says, when you come to this zone, these are our preferred candidate. We wish. The party chairman will not be there.
The party did not say these are. I mean, if you go to, for instance, yesterday, people in the South-South zone, where the Senate presidency has interestingly been zoned to, you would have thought that, oh, they would actually be holding a meeting in support of the candidate. Instead, what they were complaining about is the micro-zoning of the position to an individual. That's what their complaint. So the party did not say, oh, we've zoned it to this particular region, these are our possible candidates. That's not what the party has done. The party has said this individual here is the person whom we prefer. That's what the party has said. So if that is not imposing its own wishes on its own members, what is it?
You see, why I said so, like I said, I've been a party chairman. The party will always come up to say, this is the zone, this is the individual. We wish, it is a wish. Nobody will force me that day or any other person to vote for Mr. A or Mr. B. But it's late for you as a loyal party man to follow the instruction of your party, because tomorrow they'll always the next day. It may be your turn.
The consequences of that, I mean, some people say you'll deal with the fallout, the consequences of that, because as some people said, freedom of speech is guaranteed. It's the freedom after the speech. that no one knows about. So yes, you can vote for whomever you like on the floor of the National Assembly. It's what happens thereafter. If the party's preferred candidate doesn't emerge, that members will have to face the wrath of. Isn't that correct?
Well, I may not agree with you, because you're voting, if supposing the person wishes to come back and goes back to the party, in between when you take this decision to vote against the party interest, there's still enough time for you also to do certain things that may please the party. But then we forget whatever you think you may have done. However, for me as an individual and as a party man, the head of the family, the father, the leader, when he says something, there must be reason behind what they have said. So maybe from the track records of the people, I have not been in the National Assembly. This is my first time. I do not know so much about.
But you have midwife people who have gone into the National Assembly. So you understand. The question then is, you're going into the National Assembly, or you're going to the Assembly, whether national or state assembly, because you're from the state. You're going in there to represent not the party. You're going there to represent a constituency that has different parties represented, right?
But you went there to a platform. You remember, you went there on a platform to represent your people. There must be a platform. And in that platform, most of these people, just a minute, let's put this these people enjoyed the blessing of the party during the primaries, one way or the other.
What's the blessing of the primaries, the blessing of the party during the primaries? What's the blessing?
During the primaries, the party, in some of the constituencies, like in our own, we met with the governor, met with stakeholders, and there are some consultations that were carried out, some screening unknown to us,
and some blessings.
However you may let's look at. And at the end of the day, today I'm enjoying that benefit.
Okay, I asked you. I said, you're going into the assembly to represent a constituency that has different parties, right?
Yes.
Different Nigerians from different political parties or interests.
Yes.
What if your constituency calls you and says, Mr. Eze, we do not want this person that your party has said. This is the person we want. What would you do?
No.
At that point in time, would you listen to the party or to your constituency?
Let's take it this way. My party, my constituents elected me to represent them. It is for me to take the report back to them, to tell them, look, in our meetings or somehow, this is what came up, and I think the direction of the party is good.
Not but them, your constituent, not them telling you what they want.
At this moment now.
Oh, hold on. So you prefer, you will go with what the party is saying than what your constituents are telling you?
The constituents, as we speak now, in my constituency, may not know who is Mr. A or who is Mr. B, and there are antecedents, except if I'm coming from that background, if I'm coming from that constituency. Like, Huku, Ebonyi, federal constituency. You don't expect the masses there, the people that gave me this mandate, the local woman in the market, she doesn't know what we are talking about.
Are you sure?
And that constitutes, yes, and that constitutes the bulk vote that produced me. It's for me now, who they have given that mandate to represent them, to use my sense of reason to know that if I follow the path of the party, most likely my people are going to benefit, not the face.
Well,
not the face of the person.
What I see so far, Honorable Eze, I don't know whether it's okay to call you Honorable because you're Honorable to be. You haven't yet been inaugurated, even though you've been given your certificate of return. What I would like to know, first and foremost, you seem to be Okay, I have a number of questions, maybe like 3 of them here already, but let me ask you the very first one. Are you okay with how your party has zoned the offices? The fact that, you know, South-South gets Senate presidency, Northwest gets Deputy Senate President, the speakership has been zoned to the Northwest as well, and I think the Southeast gets the deputy speaker. So, Deputy Speaker, I'm wondering, are you comfortable with the fact that the North Central has been left out?
Well, in the National Assembly, we have about 20 positions for both levels of the House of Reps and House of Senate put together. The implication is that every zone is likely going to get about 3 positions equal, both from the minority and the majority levels. Now, from the way the party has done it, I think the North Central should hold on, because there's no way the party and the government will leave a whole zone like that, open that. There are other positions within the House that they will still get. There are also other appointments from the government that will still go to that place.
So you're sharing their concerns?
Yeah.
You're concerned
about I'm pleading with them to be a little bit patient with the government. Remember that the man elected as our president is also from the National Assembly. Senator Bola Ahmed Tinubu and Senator Shetima, both of them are the product of the National Assembly and are conversant with the Nigerian challenges and problems. There's no way they can just throw away a whole zone like that.
You are very quick to say that what your party is doing is not imposition. Yeah. You seem to be uncomfortable with the word. You say what they want, and what they're saying is that they're showing their wishes.
Yes.
That's what you're saying.
And they are also urging members
to go
that direction.
Why are you running away from the word imposition? Would it be wrong if the party were to impose its will on the people?
The word imposition sounds tyrannical. And it is not good in democracy. Yes.
So that's the reason why you're running, even though at the end of the day,
away from it.
The actions might mean exactly the same thing.
I'm telling you what is the state of affairs, not the word imposition. Because nobody among us have been compelled or forced.
The party,
if not those,
the party has no way.
Those who are campaigning now, those who are campaigning now should have been ordered by the party to stop. But even after the party has given their zoning, you have seen people who are interested, aspirants, declaring their intentions, and more will come.
Does the party have any way of compelling members to vote for a certain way or another? I just want to ask you.
We don't have.
There's no way. So if the party doesn't have it, some people would say that if there was a way the party could, they would have gone that way.
If there is a way
they could compel members.
But they don't have.
Some people argue that the party most likely would have. Your party most likely would have.
That is the condition is that if they. But now I'm telling you, nobody in the party, including me when I was the state chairman, will compel someone. We force you to go a direction. No party does that. And our party, the All Progressives Congress, won't do that because we value our members and their interests so much.
All right, let's take this conversation to Lagos now.
Oh, thank you, Mark. I must say that I think one of the first things that caught my attention was your choice of, dressing. It's remarkable, I must say, that you chose to, dress this way. It's like the dress code now for honorables in the nation's capital. But let's talk about, the conversation within your party as to whether or not to make the voting procedure, how people voted, whether or not to make it public. There's another conversation about, I don't know if you caught wind of that within your party, as to whether or not the Southeast actually deserves any seat for the principal offices of the National Assembly. It's a double-edged question, but first, are you willing or are you open to having how people voted made public so the party can see, Nigerians can see how people voted, and then the conversation about whether or not the Southeast deserves anything in the first place?
Well, on how the process of voting in the National Assembly, there is a standing rule. even before now, that has been in the House. So we are going to follow the rules. Whatever is the rule is what we are going to follow. If it is open ballot, if it's secret ballot, or whatever is the contained in the rule, we are going to follow it. And whichever way you goes, voting is expression of one's feeling or desire for leadership. Therefore, everybody should be bold enough, courageous enough. If it is open ballot, voice vote, should be bold enough to make your choice and vote. Coming to the question of what the Southeast, whether the Southeast deserves the position of the Deputy Speaker, we deserve more than that. Some people have argued in some quarters that we didn't contribute much vote to the success victory of our party during the presidential and National Assembly election. Well, the number of votes we generated may be low, is low actually, in the real sense of it. But there are other factors that we contributed because our votes also counted. Two, we also did our best to stop some magic and rigging other parties planned to do, like the PDP, the Labour Party, and other parties. We did our best to ensure that it was not perfected. So Southeast as a zone have contributed a lot in the nation's development, if not in this dispensation, the previous dispensation, because Nigeria was existing before this 2023 elections. Well, so our effort and the deputy speakership slot zoned to us.
Yeah, yes. I mean, everyone has, a good number of people have spoken to that as well. But, you know, my question, and I've asked this, of a number of people, gentlemen like yourself as well, who have come here and, spoken to Nigerians about what we're talking about, the 10th National Assembly's leadership race. Of how much significance would you, as a first-time legislator, say that this whole zoning arrangement for the leadership of the National Assembly, how much significance does it have to governance? How much impact will zoning a role or a leadership position to any region have on the governance or representation or the dividends of democracy that will come to that region? Is there any significance to you? Is there any impact of that on the region that is so represented?
It's my brother, it has so much impact. First and foremost, the zoning solves a lot of problems, especially in this dispensation. This immediate election has, you and Nigerians all know that it has further divided us. So zoning will ensure equitable distribution of positions to zones. And in doing so, every zone will have a sense of belonging. Every zone we feel remembered. Every zone we have some people to hold accountable. Those the representatives will do their best to project the government and the party in a good light within their zones and ensure that democratic dividends goes to their zone. So the impact is innumerable. It is the best so far that has happened.
Mr. Tete, the 10th Assembly is going to be inaugurated in a few weeks. It's June 13, if I read that correctly. What will be the first thing amongst you who's you already convened a group, unity group for the newly elected members? What will be the first thing that you will be targeting in terms of bills that you're going to be proposing, for instance? What will be the first bill that you and your group are going to sponsor to see Nigeria move forward?
Well, bills come up from different angles.
For example, going to the National Assembly, we are going to support your people, to represent your people.
Yes.
Did you have any bills, anything, any areas you're thinking you're going to push out there so that government can get it together and get it right, legally backing for the people?
Yes. In my zone, in my area, my constituency, for example, and my own local government, we have this long age war between my people and the Agela people. And I will tell you that before now, the people who represented us have not done anything meaningful to ensure that peace exists in those areas. Immediately after election, the first thing I did was to get in touch with my counterpart.
What has been causing the conflict?
Land dispute.
So what would you do? Or what bill? How would you, is it a bill? Is it arbitration? What would you do to ensure that conflict ends?
What we are already doing is to use this position, our position, to get our people to know that peace is the best, and which have started. Right. Secondly, we are going to get the attention of the government to put some development structures in those areas, like the link between my place. You'll be surprised. The road from my place, one market called Okwo, to Benue State, is less than 25 kilometers.
All right, thank you, Honorables. We'll have to end it there. We've been speaking with Eze Nwachukwueze, who's a member-elect of the House of Representatives, representing Ebonyi Ohaoko Federal Constituency in Ebonyi State, and convener of the 10th Assembly Unity Group for the newly elected members. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
He was also a former state chairman of the APC. And that is our show today. Do we have any comments from you? Yes, plenty. Mokwe, you want to go first?
Well, I see this one from Low Alpha Cross, talking about the economy under Buhari. Says, for me and many others, what makes a good economy is a situation where inflation will be far away from the people's daily experience. The government has performed below average, even with its lofty economic policies.
Festus Akimboewa says, there is no way our public services will not be chronically underfunded when we are using a huge percentage of our revenue to service debt. But the government appears not to have other alternatives at this time. The only alternative is to remove oil subsidy and increase taxes, which will have devastating impacts on vulnerable Nigerians.
Look at this one from Prof. Imonaka Enakena saying, next government must revisit the Oronsoy report that tends to advise the government on shedding a recurrent expenditure by cutting the duplication of government ministries and agencies, cut the bloating of political appointments, prune the civil service, and the payment of dubitable and disputable fuel subsidy, which is sculpting 70% of our income.
Well, you may not see my own comment on the screen, but it's official. Hilda Baci has broken the Guinness World Record, and guess what? She's cooked about 115 meals, served 3,000 portions, and she still has a few hours to go. We're rooting for Hilda. Are you? Amaya Makinde, have a wonderful rest of your day.
You obviously love food. Okay. Well, she's almost at 89 hours now, broken the record of 87 hours, 45 minutes. But hey, go out there and do your very best. I'm Kayode Okikilu.
Thank you for watching. Well, still cheering on Hilda. You can, in your own very little way, perhaps retweet, just put out a message for her. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Mokwe Ogunyesu.
And I hear even as early as 3 a.m., 2 a.m., still cooking the food, still tastes as fresh as though she just woke up and went into the kitchen to cook. Thank you for watching. I'm Neo Tag. We have a good day.
Our website, channelstv.com, has more information on our top stories and others. Subscribe and watch Channels Television's live stream on YouTube and other social media platforms using your mobile device browser. Or download the Channels TV app for Android and iOS devices from their respective stores. You can also watch us via your smart TV platforms on Apple TV, Android TV, Fire TV, and Roku. Channels Television, ubiquitous.
Lights, camera, action, and showtime.
This is a big win for my generation of Africans all over the world.